guys, Jay here. Welcome to Eons of Battle. I am well on my way to finishing my 2,000 point Dark Eldar army, or Drukhari army, as per Games Workshop's name change. And I have recently added something to my list, something with a lot of provenance, something with some historical significance to 40k, and that is Court of the Archon. I've been keeping my eye on this unit on eBay for the entire year. And recently I finally won eBay auction for an original Games Workshop Court of the Archon. This is probably the most bizarre unit in all of 40k, and it's a bad unit, but it's the best unit that the Dark Eldar have, and it's actually really, really strong. These models used to be something that you could essentially upgrade a Dark Eldar force. If you took an Archon, then you could bring in these units. I think in 8th edition, you might have been able to even double up on a certain number of these units. And so people were building weird like mega lists of only, or not mega lists, but like they were bringing a ton of these characters, where now in 10th edition, they have been shoved into one datasheet that's called Court of the Archon, which is a little bit Cadian Command Squad, a little bit Honored of the Chapter, like the Space Marine version of a Command Squad, but they're really not a Command Squad. The closest thing I can describe it to is if you've ever played Genestealer Cult. Genestealer Cult has like 13 different independent characters that you attach to squads, and they're all like 30 or 40 points, and they all just add a little bit of a buff. They don't really do anything themselves, but the buffs that they give each other and to the squads they can attach to makes them significantly more powerful. I would assume this is something that Games Workshop doesn't want to do going forward, because they've pretty much taken all of that sort of a unit out of the game, except Court of the Archon. This unit consists of one Slith, which I believe is like a bodyguard type of unit. I don't quite know the lore of the Slith. They seemingly have Dark Eldar hands, but obviously they're a snake, but they are really, really cool. They have a Shard Carbine, which is good. They also have a Splinter Pistol, which is fine, but you're never gonna use it because if you shoot with the pistol, then you can't shoot with the Shard Carbine. It's decent if you need something to shoot in combat, but otherwise you don't really shoot it. And then it comes with some pretty nice close combat weapons. And speaking of close combat weapons, then there is the Lamian. Yes, Lamian Medium came from this Dark Eldar model, but it is a poisoner, like a rogue poisoner, kind of a witch, kind of a regular Cabalite warrior, but she is very, very good in close combat with no ranged weapons to speak of. And speaking of no ranged weapons to speak of, then you got the Urgle. I don't know what an Urgle is. I don't know if anyone knows what an Urgle is, but it's Gollum from Lord of the Rings with extra eyes, and they're really, really good at fighting. Just a scrappy little monkey dude who gives the entire squad and all of the attached units fights first, which is one of the most powerful abilities in all of 40k. And then bringing up the rear is the Medusa. It is a brain guy who is psychic and has a flamer weapon that's pretty darn good. But yeah, it's a really weird collection. It's like the A-Team. Each one of them has their own unique special skill that really isn't very good alone or together. But when you really start to tack on the nonsense, things get really crazy. So this is Court of the Archon. It's 4 miniatures. They all have 1 wound apiece. They're not very good. 6-up saves, 6-up invulnerable saves. I think they do have a 5-up feel no pain, which is very nice. They're not very good. If you just took Court of the Archon and then you do have to attach it to an Archon, it would still be a really, really bad unit. But what you do is you take a squad of Cabalite warriors, which is 10 Cabalite warriors, but then in your list somewhere you have a Venom. And if you take a Venom, which is a smaller transport, you can break that 10-man squad into 2 5-man squads. Now in 10th edition, War Gear is free, so you take all 5 of the special War Gears and you put them on one of the 5-man teams, and then you join those 5 guys, each with their own special weapon, and attach them to Court of the Archon, which is then attached to an Archon, and so you have Build-A-Beared your way to a really, really good unit. If you do all of that, I played a game with these guys last week, and they took down Angron. It was absolutely glorious. I had a cheat sheet in front of me, and I still got some rules wrong. Just missing some rules, because literally with everything attached, and then with a blood token, and then spending a command point to have one of my strats, They literally have almost every single ability in all of Warhammer. In my Dark Eldar detachment, Drukhari detachment, any Kabalite warrior squad can have sustained hits 1 or sustained hits 2 on their guns. So for 1 CP and for 1 blood token, and with the Archon's ability, I can have all of these random crazy guns that are like 1 shot, damage 2, damage 3. It's all nonsense. But all of a sudden, it's nonsense that has like sustained hits 2, lethal, torrents. Every single weapon is its own unique thing, but rerolling all hits, rerolling all wounds. It gets so obnoxious that it breaks the game of 40k and does some serious damage. And so I now have the actual Games Workshop models, but before I bought the Games Workshop models, I actually already had a Court of the Archon in proxy models. These are resin cast miniatures that are meant to mimic the aesthetic of Court of the Archon, and they are objectively way, way better. And I mean, it doesn't hurt that they're like 20 years more modern, but I really, really like how these guys look. It's my perfect, like, I don't often proxy models, but when I do, I really, really like it because the proxy models are so much better than the thing I already like. The little Slith guy, he's fine. He was probably the coolest model in the world 15, 20 years ago. But now the new snake, it actually looks chonky enough that the snake could stand up on its tail. It's got these little wiry arms with all of these different weapons. It just looks like this is a Slith, and then this is what a Slith was meant to look like. And I feel that way about all of these proxy miniatures. The Lamian, the old Lamian is really, really good. I really like the old Lamian, but it does suffer from the one single metal miniature syndrome. You know, it looks really, really good from the front, but then from the side, it is completely flat. There is not much going on, but it's really good. And so, you know, now with modern advancements in technology, we can have a model that is actually full and like filled up and is striking a more interesting and dynamic pose, but with all of the same accoutrements. It's really, really nice. The Medusa with her skirt, similarly, the same kind of a problem going on with the single piece metal model. Really, really good from the front, but then from the side, it's a piece of paper. I think the head actually was a separate piece of metal, and so the head has a little bit more texture and a little bit more interesting stuff going on. But this Medusa is so much better. They are casting I-beam, which you have to be careful of because it's a pistol. Another thing with Court of the Archon, all of those dumb things I mentioned, I mentioned the Venom. You don't put them in the Venom, you put them in a Raider. And so now you're buying another transport, because one of the transport was just to split the Kabalite squad. So now you have another transport, but you have to be careful because of the way keywords interact in 10th edition. If you use firing deck, technically, even though in the lore, like what's happening in the game is all of the characters are poking their hand out the window of the Raider and shooting with their guns. But in the game, it's counted as the Raider shooting with all of those guns. And if you shoot with a pistol, you can't shoot with anything that doesn't have the pistol keyword. So if you have to remember to not shoot with the I-beam or only want to shoot with the I-beam and other pistols, which you might want to because the Archon and the Kabalite Warrior Sergeant have blast pistols, which are really, really good, essentially melt-a-guns. 6-inch range, so you have to get pretty close, but there's so incredibly much to keep track of with this squad. And Games Workshop can't let it go on, but I don't see a solution. For the Urgal, I actually didn't like the count as Urgal because it was like this little dragon guy. And so instead of using the old Finecast Urgal, I actually have one of the Blackstone Fortress Urgals, which is already seemingly like a little sneak peek into what Games Workshop could do with this unit moving forward, because the old Urgal was carved with the back of a toothbrush or a toothpick, and then the new one is beautifully rendered, digitally sculpted. It looks really, really nice. And Games Workshop will have to, probably in the very near future, redo the Court of the Archon. They better do it. All of this madness that I'm rattling off with the rules is a big reason of why I tend to think Games Workshop might try to squat Court of the Archon, but I don't think they can. Because, you know, I could see Games Workshop being like, okay, we're gonna get rid of Court of the Archon, but we'll give them like a new jet bike. Can't do that. The Eldar already have like a new version of jet bikes. okay, well then we'll give them a new, like, better Raider, or a better Venom. Can't do that because the Harlequins, which are also Eldar, got their own special floaty tank. And so then it's like, well, what can we do to make a new interesting unit for Dark Eldar? Okay, we do Court of the Archon, but we make them like an uppy downy scouting unit. You can't do that because Dark Eldar already has Mandrakes. The Games Workshop is really stuck in a corner with, you have to redo Court of the Archon, but you probably can't let it continue to be the absolute disaster of a unit it is currently in 40k. And so I'm really, really excited to see what Games Workshop does with it. And so that's why I wanted to get these models, because I love the nostalgia and the history of the original Games Workshop ones. I really like the look of these proxies and the way that a non-Games Workshop artist came up with what these things look like with a little bit more fidelity. And I'm really excited to see what Games Workshop is going to do when they revamp the Court of the Archon, which they have to do. Games Workshop, if you come out with Dark Eldar next year and you don't redo Court of the Archon, you don't redo Beastmaster, all of the different units that are in the game but don't currently have models in the Games Workshop web store, Dark Eldar players will riot. All 8 of us are gonna storm Warhammer World. I have been absolutely falling in love with the Dark Eldar because they do feel like old school 40k, because they literally are old school 40k, because they are the least looked after, the least updated, the least anything of modern 40k. Like orcs, Tyranids, Space Marines have hundreds of different like units and data sheets and things. The Dark Eldar, we got like 14, and that's it. And we're losing some all the time. We lost Rackhearth, we lost Grotesque somehow. We didn't lose Grotesque, we still have rules for them and we take them, but there's no models. There's no models to actually buy. The last time this happened was probably like 2014 when Games Workshop sued Chapter House because Chapter House did make the miniatures that Games Workshop didn't have models for. And Games Workshop lost a lot they didn't lose everything, but the courts did side a lot with the Chapter House saying like, you don't make this model, therefore you don't have any rights to models of this model that you don't make. And so since then, Games Workshop has been making sure that they always have a model to go along with the rules. But not for Dark Eldar, and I'm really, really excited to see what Games Workshop does moving forward with the Dark Eldar. There's rumors, and there's always rumors about everything always, but there are rumors that for 11th edition, it'll be a launch box with Space Marines, because you always gotta have Space Marines, versus Aliens, because it's always Aliens. And so is it going to be Space Marines versus Dark Eldar? I don't want to wait that long, but it would be really cool to see the Dark Eldar get an absolute ton of love from Games Workshop. Because right now, they really, really aren't, but I'm still having a really, really fun time of just doing the absolute silliest stuff. When I was playing against World Eaters and I was going up against Angron, when it was time to shoot and to fight with Court of the Archon, it was literally like, give me a second while I pull up 30 different data sheets and rules on my iPad, because this is gonna take a minute. And that's not good. That's not necessarily fun. It's fun for me, but it's definitely not fun for my opponent. And it probably shouldn't be how the game functions, but it is really, really fun when your Dark Lance with sustained hits 3 rolls a 6 and then re-rolls wound rolls. And then two of those go through, and then you're doing tank levels of damage from one Kabalite warrior. And that's kind of what I like about Dark Eldar. They're not strong at all. It's almost an army-wide 6-up save. They don't really deal a ton of damage, especially compared to almost anything from any other codex. But the shenanigans, the blood tokens, the stratagems, they can make the units absolutely pop off. But if they don't, then you just lose the game. It's a really, really interesting army to play. I played so much Space Marines and Tyranids and a little bit of Orcs, but then playing some games with Dark Eldar is like, this is really, really different. And it's really fun to have to be on the very end of an era for Games Workshop. It's the last army that has this sort of nonsense, and I am here for it. And you know what else I'm here for? That's right, EonsOfBattle.com. EonsOfBattle.com is the place to find our merch, like the new Nick and Jay dice, and is the best way to support us doing what we do with a membership. Each month, members will get a credit they can use on our new monthly terrain pack or any previous pack we have ever made. For the month of November, EonsOfBattle.com is getting chaotic with the Desecrated Engine. A war machine that could loosely be called a tank, but such an ordinary word does not properly describe the power of this demonic machine. With grasping chainsaw-tipped claws and a tummy blaster that won't quit, this unstoppable engine of chaotic might can roar its way through the battlefield. This insect-like monstrosity comes fully loaded with armor and weapon options, so it is ready to rumble with any army that dares to face it. I now have 2 Court of the Archons that I am happy to have, and if Games Workshop, if you want to make a new Court of the Archon, I will gladly get that one too, and then I'll have 3, and I'll still probably only ever bring 1 in games, but it will be a toss-up though. Do I bring the old school GW models, or do I bring the new cool Count As miniatures? I'm not sure. And let me know in the comments below, what do you guys think Games Workshop is gonna do? Are they going to make Dark Eldar players really happy and just bring back Court of the Archon and Beastmaster and Grotesques and Uriel Rackhearth and all of these different things that the Dark Eldar are missing? But are they just gonna bring them right back and it's gonna be great? Or are they gonna do some shenanigans of dropping the old stuff, but maybe bringing in some new weird Games Workshop stuff? If I had to guess, we're probably gonna get 1 character called the Solarite, and it's a character for like Rax or something. Or no, it would be a character. Solarites are the sergeants of Scourges. So yeah, we're probably gonna get 1 Scourge character and that's it. And then Games Workshop will just continue to pretend like Court of the Archon is a real thing. But us Dark Eldar players, we know. We know the history of the Court of the Archon. Thanks for watching.